there can be a wall, like a wall of separation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, it's an unpopular phrase, but I think it's a serious thing that we should consider, staying farther apart,
Mm-hmm.
than normal. So.
Yeah. Well, once disease X comes and wipes us all out.
The fifth. Well, we're going to be on like, is that the day when the people with 8 shots are complaining about the people with only 7 shots? Is that time?
Maybe.
What era are we talking about in the future?
I'm not sure what era we're talking about. This, I think that this is what Bill Gates is rolling out possibly tomorrow.
That's possible.
Brain-eating coronaviruses. I don't know.
That's right. I saw that headline.
I've been on the wrong side of X, but
I saw that headline. They have a 100% fatal version of coronavirus. What could we possibly think of next? Oh, wait. A 100% fatal version of the coronavirus.
People are like, trust the science, but then like the scientists go into a lab and make this for fun.
Which scientists? Because I'm not getting a good feeling from a lot of these folks.
What did you do today, science man? Well, today I went and made an even deadlier version of the pandemic that caused us to shut down the entire
disease
economy.
That cannot be beaten.
Yeah.
Well, on that lovely note, welcome to another Unauthorized Caucus. It's Thursday. It's noon. And we're a couple minutes behind. We're trying to get our equipment to all behave here. But we're glad that you're with us and glad you're going to be part of a good discussion today. At least I hope it'll be a good discussion. Mm-hmm. I mean, we've certainly, as I said, when I was sending the link around, someone said, good, I was afraid you guys were going to be controversial or something. Talking about religion and politics. So yeah, it's a good one to dive into. But before we do, like, share, and subscribe wherever you are. Big red button on YouTube, big green button on Rumble. And also go to phyllisschlafly.com. Sign up for the email list. That's how I let you know this is coming. Although some of you already know, you have those notifications set. You know who you are. We like you. Or if you want to get the email afterward that has tons of links and all kinds of things that you can share and look at and go diving deeper into these subjects, go sign up for the email list. We don't want to lose touch with you. And once YouTube decides they don't like the, my 8-shot joke, my 8th booster, or something like that, we're gone. So make sure that you go and sign up for the email list so we can always get in touch with you. But
if they didn't boot us after last week, I don't know if they ever will with us getting into the, I guess I did, kind of tiptoe around the special trigger words. But,
certain trigger words.
Yeah.
I had so many people were like, what words are we not saying? And I was like, well, it's so stupid, but I'll say it to you out loud and you're going to, so it's trying to navigate the YouTube algorithms. This is why you just, to be honest, go to Rumble, follow us there. Also, I think we're going to head to podcast form soon and get some audio only stuff going so that you can just hit subscribe. And then you can have Mason and Ryan on demand without even having to look at us.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how cool would that be, right?
Yeah, you can download it and listen to it on a plane.
Exactly. You could download it and listen to it. No internet connection required. Mm-hmm. It's a serious possibility that we've got going. So
yeah,
you should do that and take a look. But nothing big happened this week, right?
Are you kidding?
Nothing at all.
No, it's been an incredibly uneventful week.
Uneventful week. We did have a kickoff to the 2024 campaign season, obviously, and that's kind of what we're here to talk about because not just Iowa. We haven't talked about Iowa. We talked last week about kind of the looking forward to Iowa, but that, in my mind, Iowa, if you haven't heard yet, Donald Trump won 98 of the 99 counties, and the one county he didn't win in the Iowa caucuses, Nikki Haley won by 1 vote. Did that change? Because it was 1 vote with 99%.
That's the last thing I heard was 1 vote.
Okay, so it was pretty commanding. Now, there's a lot of course, I'm seeing anti-Trump people talk about, the turnout numbers, and this doesn't mean anything, and this and that and the other, and all the different things. But the reality is we can really kind of pull a pretty clear picture that Trump has locked up the nomination for the party. I mean, and this isn't, and, I said that, and a lot of people, because Iowa's picked the last nominee like 5 times over. Because, of course, Ted Cruz in 2016 didn't win the nomination. You go back all the way through, all the way back to Mike Huckabee in 2008, didn't win the nomination. Everyone since in between. Iowa can be pretty independent. But Iowa is treating Donald Trump like an incumbent. I mean, that's the pure and simple fact.
Right.
And that, when you kind of look at the whole thing through that light, I'm pretty confident in saying, he's got the nomination locked up. I think we all thought that based on polling numbers, but this tells me concretely he has. So it kind of enters the whole field of, all right, if anyone out there was holding out hope, a conservative voter who didn't really like Trump or has a problem here or there, thought there was a better choice, they now have to face the idea of, okay, now what do I do? And this isn't for the folks like the Lincoln Project people. That's not who I'm really talking about, who just, the establishment, the neocons, the deep state. We'll throw out a few more phrases here that might need defining. That's not for these folks who are never going to come on board with that agenda or behind Donald Trump. This is for the yous and me's of the world who put our faith and our values first. Our political opinions are based off of those. I think that's true for a lot of people in the United States of America, and a huge section for sure of the Republican Party. And there's a lot of people in there who, how do I balance these things? How do I balance my politics atop my faithful convictions? And I mean, I'm going to broaden this. Like I talk about Christian values. I'm not trying to narrow anything down doctrinally. Here at the Eagles, we have always, and Phyllis Schlafly always had a massive coalition of Protestants, of Catholics, of Mormons, of all kinds of groups that commonly identified why the nuclear family with a mother and father in the home was best, why traditional marriage, one man and one woman, was best, why, I'll go down the list, why preserving and protecting the dignity of human life from the womb to the grave was best. There are all these things we agreed upon. This is a pretty wide section of people in America. And I'm hearing a lot of folks that don't seem to know how to square that with the political realities of where we are and the political leaders who have arisen to address those realities. So this is a really interesting and weighty conversation. Like, what do we do? What do Christians do in 2024? And I think it's a big conversation that we started having in the hallways earlier this week. And it was one of those, no, stop. No one talk about this.
Save it.
Let's save it till Thursday. Let's go talk about it on Thursday. So here we are. So buckle up. It's only been 8 minutes, but we got another hour or so before we'll let you go. No, I'm kidding. We're not going to go that long.
We set the record last week, though.
We did. We closed in on it.
We'll wait a little bit to break that record. Anyways,
we'll see. Yeah, not today. Not today.
It's definitely a very complicated issue, and this week especially is a time I'm going to say we don't come here to bring you the answers. We come here to start conversations, because I don't have the answers on this. This is not something that I think that I know exactly where I stand on this issue. And because there are lots of different stances that Christians take when it comes to politics. And I think that's because of the ambiguity of the age that we live in. Because there's a lot of liberal Christians out there that think like, oh, well, this gay rights stuff, that's cool, that's okay with me, and immigration is fine with me. Like there are brothers and sisters in Christ, and like and they'll cite parts of the Bible like when Paul says there is no Jew nor Greek in Christ, for we are all one body, which might be a slight paraphrase, but it contains the spirit of that statement. But they twist the spirit of that statement to mean that, okay, therefore no borders should exist and anybody can live here. So there are people that take that position. There are people that just want to see their Christian value, conservatism, protect their Christian values, stuff like pro-life, traditional family values, things like that. And then there's even there's the whole Christian nationalist thing going on right now, which is a very big topic that that we've been flirting with getting into, but it requires a lot of research, just because that itself is as complicated as the problem I'm talking about now. So there are lots of different ways to look at this. Should we put morality into law? And that's a big question. And then answering that question requires defining some terms. Like, what do you mean by put morality into law? Like, are you gonna just pat a kiss through the House of Representatives? So no, not exactly that. That's not going to do what we want it to do. But so it's not a clear-cut issue. But I think what kicked off our discussion was the question of, is it a problem when the candidate themselves doesn't live up exactly to Christian values in their personal life? And the answer is yes and no, because Christ is not running for president. So that's pretty much a non-question. You're not going to get somebody. And all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. And that includes Trump, of course, that includes DeSantis, that includes Haley, that especially includes Biden, who should probably be excommunicated from the Catholic Church for his stances on abortion. He's fallen especially short, but I'm not here to judge.
You heard it. Well, it sounded pretty judgy to me, but I agreed with it. It was a good judgment. I call that good judgment.
Yes. So, but then people say, like, well, okay, I see what you're saying, but Trump, he's had multiple marriages, and like DeSantis, he's just like a devoted family man, and devoted to multiple marriages and multiple kids from different marriages, and he owns casinos,
Mhm.
hives of vice, things like that, and it's so and fair enough. That's a fair enough question to ask, but um, I I still don't think that should be disqualifying for us because we're not voting for that. We're not voting for the personal behaviors of somebody. We're not voting for somebody's sins. Um, in any case, when their sins are particularly egregious, I think that's something that should be taken into account, such as in the case of like the Epstein stuff that we were talking about last week.
Mhm.
Um, but you're not voting for their sins, and even when people fall short, they're not coming into office to promote their sins. And with Trump, I think it's easier to put those aside. It's not the only thing you have to look at. When somebody's just a candidate for the presidency, especially when they're a political outsider, one of the only things you have to look at is their personal and business lives. But Trump was president, and we got to see what he did do as president. And when it comes to moral and family issues, he is the singular most pro-life president probably in our nation's entire history.
Mhm.
The things he did have had more of an impact on pro-life than anybody else. And yeah, so and that speaks for itself. But you sound like you had something you wanted to chime in.
Well, I was just gonna let you run and just sit it out. I mean, you were kinda going, you were on a roll there, so
Yeah, and bear with me. I've got a little bit of a cold, so if I sound a little slower or more nasally, that's why. Um,
everyone already knows you're slow and it's okay.
yeah, well, you're chugging the coffee. Maybe I can have done that before this.
This is true, I do have that. Well, first of all, let me jump back and postulate something and throw it out there. I hear this a lot, and this actually kind of goes knocking on the door of the conversation that I know a lot of folks pick up on the whole this confusion. And we could probably do a whole episode on um, the myths and the truths of the separation of church and state,
Mhm,
because this is, I think, something that is completely misunderstood by a lot of people, and often ends up being some sort of this muzzle or self-restraint that Christians use that ought not to. And this really, I
mhm,
mean, that honestly knocks on the door of the Christian nationalist conversation. What do you mean by that?
mhm,
But I mean, let me back up and talk about this sense for a second. We talk about, should we? I hear people ask this question a lot. Should we, just legislate our values, and make laws based on our morals? Well, guess what? Every law is somebody's version of morality.
mhm,
Every law is deciding something that is right or that is wrong. This is literally the entire premise of building a legal code, deciding what's right and what's
mhm,
wrong. Now, some of these things are arbitrary, speed limits. Like,
mhm,
this is that some of these things aren't arbitrary. We've decided upon it already as a civilization,
mhm,
the dignity of human life, in that you can't murder someone else or steal their stuff, private property.
mhm,
This kind of goes across. Speed limit, though, relative. It's
mhm,
very relative. I shouldn't. I should say relative. The term I'm looking for. We've made this thing that we've all kind of agreed upon because it's for the good of this area of
mhm,
society. Abide by it, or you get a little bit of slap on the wrist.
mhm,
I mean, this is all a version of what's right and wrong. Someone is going to be deciding as a nation, as a law-abiding nation, what is right and what is wrong through
mhm.
legislation. Who should that be? People with the right morals or the wrong morals. I mean, that
Right.
kind of, I'm oversimplifying, but not really, in a certain sense. So when you come to the point where we are now, um, to the latter point of what you were saying, it really is interesting. I was always raised that, and this credit to my parents for this, because this is my understanding growing. Vote is not an absolute moral endorsement of someone.
Mhm,
I'm a citizen of the United States. Now, that is subservient to my being a citizen of God's kingdom.
mhm,
A citizen in heaven. That is the eternal perspective. I'm just here for right now. But while I'm here
mhm,
for right now, I have a responsibility. I have duties. I'm a citizen.
mhm,
And voting is not some sort of absolute moral stamp of endorsement. It's a tactical tool in my belt. I get to pull this out and use it. Sometimes I am super happy and on board with someone in particular, this person I agree with on everything, but rarely does that happen.
mhm.
It's, I agree mostly with this person. And a lot of the times now, especially because we live in a two-party system, which is another whole topic to talk about, to pick between, well, there's two different directions that are being articulated. And then even aside from what's being said, there's two different realities that are going to come down. I know that you're saying this, but what are you actually going to do?
Right.
I've got to consider these four things and decide which one is going more toward the side that provides. And I forget, I think, I'm not even going to mention the name because that's going to be a distraction for some people. I remember um, one Christian speaker who said, when it comes to these kinds of decisions, if you don't have someone to vote for who you just absolutely love who they are, you're making a vote as an informed citizen for who is going to create the most fertile soil for liberty to flourish. That doesn't even mean you understand liberty. But if this is the choice out of all of my choices, realistic choices, that kind of moves that direction, that gives me the opportunity to continue to have liberty, that's the direction you should look at. So it's not really a matter of personality. It's not a matter of personal morals. It's a matter of platform. So with Trump, like, I understand all the personal stuff, but guess what? To your point, Trump might have been one of the most blatantly immoral ones when it comes to marriage and times married and everything. But Trump gave us three people who shut down Roe v. Wade, which was legally and morally repugnant and existed for 40 some odd years through how many presidents? Now, they didn't get three opportunities to put people on the court, but even when they did, they caved. They put up, folks. I mean, they caved to the pressure, except for a very few rare, instances. Even Republicans like Reagan, one was Sandra Day O'Connor. That turned out to not be so great. The other one was Scalia. That was wonderful. With Bush, we had was that Souter and then Clarence Thomas, or I forget which way around it was. One of them was wonderful. The other one was pretty awful. It took a long time to get rid of that voice that was not a textualist, an originalist. So Trump took every opportunity and stuck to his guns. He didn't do everything I wanted him to do, but on a lot of stuff, he was pretty rock solid. So that platform gave me as a very different personal moral compass than Trump, or at least Trump used to be. I don't know the man personally. That gave me the best opportunity to exercise that morality and advance that morality inside America. The other side didn't, even though he claims to be a Catholic that had all these similar values as me. The reality was no. And I look at that argument, and I actually that's kind of like he said, that's what started this conversation. I'm completely ignoring the chat. I'm over here and see what's going on. Audio is very choppy. Sorry to hear about that. Might be kind of choppy today. I see it's kind of glitching in and out on us. If you have to head over to YouTube.
I see our YouTube is a little choppy as well.
A little choppy as well. We'll see. Maybe I need to clean out our internet cache. My apologies if we're running a little funky there. But when I started seeing, this conversation, it's this, well, I hear people say, why would you support Trump because of all these things he did? Why would he be our choice? Can't we do better than that? And I'm like, well, I mean, yeah, we could do better than that. I'm sure I could go find someone, but that person's not running for president, let alone do they have the command and support that Trump has. So practically speaking, this is who it is. But also, what's the other side of this? The natural thing that I seem to be implying is that I ought to, as a Christian, vote for the person who sounds the most Christian in their personal life. Is that the case? Because if so, I can name a lot of people who look and sound Christian when they do, and they behave in a way that has destroyed every Christian value that I understand about life, liberty, and property. This isn't the standard. Is who's going to actually do the work that then gives you the room to grow and move. That's really a very key point, and it kind of like I just look at it and I say it's very simplistic. It's a very simplistic thing, and I think that as Christians we have a responsibility to kind of look down and understand how exactly this weaves in, not just on the face of who sounds the most like me, but who actually has done the most that benefits me, even if this person kind of seems off kilter from the get-go. But then we have the understanding and the responsibility that this ought to be my job above everybody else's, because shouldn't we be leading this kind of, trending morality and culture this way? It's better, and we know it. And ultimately, we're all trying to advance and grow the kingdom. I mean, shouldn't that be it? So it kind of baffles me to hear that, but I wonder how many people actually think that and abide by that kind of logic that, well, I need to vote for the person who is most moral. It's like, well, is and appears to be are two very different things.
Really only God can judge the heart.
Right.
But we as voters are meant to judge policy decisions and what we would like to see placed through policy, because somebody can act very holier than thou or even pharisaical and like seem like a paragon of Christian virtue in their external life. But so did the Pharisees. Not Christian virtue at the time, obviously. That was the ancient Hebrew virtue. But then Christ pointed out, it's like this is all just for show, and that's not really our place to point out. But the point is, we can't really know, and that's why we can't vote on that. You can't vote on that, even if somebody, seems like they're the most holy and pious person. It could all be a farce, and it could be a farce specifically to attract people like you who are going to vote on that. Something to consider. So
yeah. And that's, what this does now, though, it brings me down to a very interesting discussion surrounding, and by the way, someone over on Rumble said something about, I'm interested to hear your commentary on the lineup of vice presidential candidates. It's just now what everyone's running for at this point. But in the wake of Iowa and the caucus there, it really is interesting to kind of look across the field and say, okay, kind of what we talked about last week, some of the dynamics really are there. People, I think, still greatly understand, and this is where we went off on a little bit of a tangent last week. I did. And also I got to join, you should all go watch daily if you don't, the Sentinel Report. Alex Newman, good friend of us, good friend of the Eagles in our program, and then Andrew Muller, who works for him. They have a great program, and I got to go on last Friday. We talked a little bit about this because the last few weeks, DeSantis has just taken this really interesting turn of establishment-y talk, bushy talk, olden times conservative. I say olden times from my early years, 20 years ago, this kind of weird line of ignoring so much of what has come out that we understand, because the world radically changed. And I think this is something especially for Christians to understand. And Phyllis Schlafly was so good about this. And this is why I want to bring this up is Phyllis Schlafly really understood how issues in America change and shift. And even as Christians, our rock solid, unchangeable convictions, like on pro-life, and the issue of abortion, on traditional marriage and defining that and respecting that in society, and the legal definitions and fights over that, even though these are rock solid non-negotiables for us, sometimes politically other issues supersede them. It's not that it's a more important moral issue, but it is that it is a more pressing issue to deal with for the nation, for the sake of deciding these other ones. Like she made that case with immigration and pretty much said, hey, everyone, legal and illegal mass immigration is more important than the fight to define marriage or redefine it and the fight to protect life. And everyone just kind of stopped and said, what are you talking about? It's more important. And she said, but listen, we have this platform that we're arguing over these things now, but if we continue to allow the left and this new neoconservative free trade agenda to pump mass immigration in here, and we continue to lose those new immigrants that are coming in and then becoming voters en masse to the Democrat Party, they're going to change the voting bloc permanently in America. We never have a hope of winning a national or a lot of statewide elections ever again. Then what's the point if we disagree with them on abortion? They have successfully locked us out of ever having a say in the legislative bodies because we can't win elections anymore.
Right.
So yeah, it's kind of more important. And when everyone kind of draws the dots, they go, oh, you're right. It's not that it's more important of a greater moral value. It is more pressing that we must deal with this first. We can put this argument aside and come back to it.
Right.
And that was really kind of a thing that impressed upon me. I thought that's where we are. And I think that conservatives need to understand that there may be someone who actually would be more pro-life or pro-marriage than Donald Trump. But I'm not sure that that's the biggest issue we face.
Yeah.
I mean, I look at it and say, yes, these are huge. I mean, you look at the wave of transgenderism and all the different things that are happening and being, the assault upon our culture. And yet we have a federal government that is persecuting and imprisoning its own citizens because they are politically different than the current regime that's in power.
Yeah.
You name me the issue that is more important. We got to deal with that first.
Right.
So there may be someone who's better on a couple of these other issues that are more important than Donald Trump. But if Donald Trump is the guy who's going to waltz in and take a sledgehammer to that administrative state, that system, we have to have him first because that has to be dealt with. Otherwise, these other folks are not going to deal with the problem. It's just going to keep kind of, maybe we slow it down, maybe not. But Republicans have a pretty bad history of actually shrinking government. Not that Trump necessarily did a great job, slashing some of the federal agencies I'd like him to, or stopping the spending, especially his final year. 2020 was awful, but balancing the whole four, that was still, there was, I want to do it again, not 2020, but the other 3 years. But I mean, I look at it and say, if this is the guy they've chosen to hate, there must be a reason. That's my guy.
It's because he's against their agenda.
And even at a bare minimum, he's not even if you want to say, oh, he's not actively fighting it, Donald Trump's not that smart. He's certainly not participating with it and just gliding it along really fast. Even at that, it puts the brakes on something because he's outside the system and they don't like him. If we're going to look at the actual priorities of what's a problem in America right now, I look at that and say, as a Christian, that's it. Because I don't want to have to be sneaking around memorizing pages of the Bible and being thrown in jail for trying to hold a Christian, service.
Right.
Like I'm portraying the extreme, but guess what? That happened. That happened in our life, not your lifetime, my lifetime. That was still happening in my lifetime.
Right.
In the Eastern Bloc over in Europe.
Right.
Because I was born, before the fall of the USSR, technically. Technically, I'm going to hold on to that one. But I mean, that's a reality. That happened. It could happen again. And the beginnings of it is persecuting your chief opponent in an election and trying to get him taken off of the ballot. Like serious dictator stuff, trying to imprison him, actually imprisoning his followers who are little peons that can't afford anything. I mean, 1,000 plus J6 folks thrown in jail and more coming, the DOJ says. You name me an issue that's more important than that. I'll come back to these other issues. That one, though, if they jail us all and take away our right to have a say-so in this nation, then arguing over whether or not we legalize this kind of marriage or not, or we have this or that abortion policy is kind of irrelevant because they're literally about to take away our entire platform to have it. That supersedes all.
Yeah.
So then who is that issue? Who is fighting that issue? Who has the best voice on that issue? It's not Ron DeSantis. I might have more faith that Ron DeSantis has a closer faith to mine than Donald Trump does. But last week, Ron DeSantis said, oh, that's all just a distraction. We need to move past it.
Right.
Like 1,000 people thrown in jail for a political opinion is not a distraction. That's the dance, man. That is the whole thing right there. Sorry.
And that's not.
We're both on soapboxes today.
No, that's not Nikki Haley either.
No, it's not.
I mean, she wants to see everybody who uses the internet being registered, making sure your real identification is connected to whatever you comment online. And that will only worsen that issue. And not only that, that will harm one of the only things that is actually benefiting discourse in America right now is because we essentially have our own American samizdat of people online anonymously, trading information back and forth and being able to, keep the Western tradition alive in a way that is very hard to do above the board. And that would completely destroy that. That's taking away one of the last strongholds of intellectual discourse. But yeah, I think that the immigration issue is extremely important. I agree with Ryan and I agree with Phyllis and I agree with Trump that is the number one issue that our country faces today. To Nikki Haley's credit, I mean, she is in favor of stopping, the flow of migrants through the border. And so is Ron DeSantis. I think any Republican that is campaigning is going to have to take that position, but nobody has been as strong on that issue as Trump and as strong rhetoric. DeSantis has had legislation in Florida on that specific issue, but I mean, Trump talked about we're going to have deportations on a scale that this nation has never seen, and now some of you might be saying like, oh, and this guy is the guy telling me, you're talking about me. This guy's the guy telling me what Christian policy positions are, and now he's talking about deportations. I am, yes, I definitely am, because we have gotten so twisted up with the way that Christians view immigration and the way that immigration is supposed to work. Not everybody deserves to live here. That's just not how the world works. That's not how the world can work.
Well, living somewhere in particular is not a basic human right.
Right.
Let's be clear. Basic human rights exist, but we as humanity has included a whole lot of things into that category that aren't.
Right.
Sorry, go ahead.
Right. And we've been able to create the most prosperous country in the history of the world, the United States of America. And who was it built by? It was built by Americans. And I think the fact that America is prosperous has something to do with the fact that it's filled with Americans. So when we ship in millions of non-Americans that kind of interrupts that whole equation of
Mhm.
America is prosperous because of Americans.
Well, and that's okay. So let me take a second to point this out. This is actually, yeah, I mean, so I'm going to pause, backing up. America is uniquely Christian
Hmm.
in a very interesting way. Yes, we have a Christian heritage, but here's the thing. Almost every single other nation in the world is based upon some sort of a cultural identifier. All
Hmm.
of us speak this language. All of us have these customs. All of us are from this original people group. Whatever it is, it's based upon these different tribal factors, and out of that, nation states often come.
Hmm.
I'm not. I think almost every. I would say pretty easy. Now, obviously, people move from country to country. That's the thing. America was not founded on that at all.
Right.
America, back to the very beginnings of the colonists who came here, of the settlers, of the
Hmm.
people seeking refuge from these other places. It is this hodgepodge of people. The formation of the nation state was not based on we look the same, we sound the same, we have the same religion, we have the same values. It was based upon a similar set of espoused ideas,
Hmm.
of a similar set of we want to live where we respect each other's private property, where we respect innovation and the rights of your intellectual property, where
Hmm.
we where we expressly respect your right to worship freely
Hmm.
according to the dictates of your conscience, while we also respect the life and property of other people.
Hmm.
All of these, yes, I agree with that. Great. Come on. So to just open it up, the whole point of America has always been the assimilation of I agree with your ideas. I actually kind of reject my
Hmm.
part of my background. I will obviously bring my culture, my food, my language, my this, my that, all
Hmm.
of the wonderful things that make the melting pot. But over all of that, I agree with the idea and I want to be part of that. I conform to this. That's the basis. And
Hmm.
honestly, that's kind of a very uniquely Christian thing because it doesn't matter where you came from. It doesn't matter what sin you have. The point is this new beginning, and we are now a
Hmm.
part of the family. We are children of God. This is a very
Hmm.
interesting thing. It's not just fling it open because anyone should be allowed to come in. No, everyone has always come here and been allowed in because I want to conform to that idea.
Hmm.
These group of agreed upon ideals. That's what America is. So
Right.
it really always very much frustrates me, and this is why I just cringe when I hear, especially the left, say it. That's not who we are. No, who we are is nothing like you're saying we
Hmm.
are. When you look back, who we are is very clear in the identity of the people, and we
Hmm.
agree on things. And that identity, that American identity, has nothing to do with skin color, with preference, with language spoken, or past heritage, or anything. That's my heritage, who I am as an American, and that is a choice of conforming to a certain set of ideas.
Right. Well, yeah,
Anyway, assimilation. I'm sorry, that was my long-winded version of assimilation matters. Stop just people in.
yeah. Well, and but I think assimilation might be a little bit stronger than what you're letting on, which I think I might contradict a few of your points here, but not in a way to say that you're wrong, uh, but to say that you're right. I just get the same conclusion from a different space that I I think America goes a little deeper than just to say that your cultural heritage has to play a big part in that set of ideas actually working. Um, 'Cause the ideas America was founded on, are essentially the codification of 1,000 years of British culture refining itself, developing itself into cultural and finding that, okay, these are the norms that work after we worked as a society for a millennium together. And then they brought that over to America. And then other cultures that came, whether they were French or German or other Europeans or Spanish, as they came, they had to adjust themselves to that. It means leaving some part of their cultural heritage behind. And because they are just uh, in proximity close to their home countries to England, um, that wasn't as hard to do. And I believe that anybody from any heritage can do that, that they can transform themselves. But that does mean they have to chop off part of their heritage because American heritage is American heritage.
Mhm.
It's not Indian heritage. It's not German heritage. It's not. It's not Chinese heritage. It's not Nigerian heritage. Uh, those are not the heritages that make America work. It is specifically American heritage, it's a specific part of the world and that part of the world's history. Um, and I think that's part of why when our country tried to export democracy through all the neocon years, that it just didn't work because because they're putting the cart before the horse in that situation, because America came from these ideas from England over a long time. It was written down expression of what was understood by the people culturally after a very long time. So just saying like, okay, now we have these written down set of rules of constitutionalism and liberalism. We're just going to put that on top of another culture. It's not going to work. That's not how anything in the world works. Cultures are unique and they are diverse. Um, so maybe if you gave to them and let them uh, add their own infusions to it in their own countries, let's say in like the Middle East or Africa or something, or Southeast Asia, somewhere that has a different cultural set of values going back a very long way. Maybe over time they could adopt these concepts of liberalism and constitutionalism into their system, and have their own expression of it. But it's not as simple as, okay, well, we have these set of ideas and they just work. It's like, no, you have to undergo a complete cultural transformation, which is something that migrants that we see today are not willing to do. They're not interested in it whatsoever. People coming over the border, even the good ones, are ones that are not interested whatsoever in integrating into American identity. And regardless, um, most of them aren't the good ones anyway. There's a high proportion of them that are committing crimes, causing issues. Um, so yeah, I think that's very
Telling
important.
me they're not sending their best.
They're not sending their best. They are not, and this has to end. Um, and but it's very hard and this is why I'm completely against immigration as it stands right now, because I don't think our culture was strong enough to spread into new adopters. I don't think that any migrant that comes into America is going to be able to assimilate, because there's very little left to assimilate to. Our American identity is being torn apart, and we are doing very little to reassert it. Um, because even people who come from more conservative cultural backgrounds, people talk about how Latin Americans have a very strong Catholic culture, but they come to America, the second generation immigrants, their children, they're going to be swept up instantly into TikTok culture and just turn into complete libtards, and that's going to be the same across the board, you know. Um, so yeah, the immigration has to be stopped completely. Maybe a very small little bit of legal immigration, but this country's identity is falling apart because we are being invaded and we are being replaced.
I'll have to go find it. Phyllis Schlafly had a really, really good white paper on that, a booklet that she put out. How mass illegal and I think I forget the exact name. How mass legal and illegal immigration are dooming America, or something to that effect. And in it, she really said, like, I'm not. We are a nation of immigrants, but right now we have a system that's out of control. So what do? You stop it, and then slowly restart in a controlled manner. Like, what are you trying to do? It's like trying to herd everything. No, you shut the door, and then when you've regrouped yourself, you start to open it, and new system happens.
Yeah.
Like that's mostly what everyone's advocating for. Not never let anyone in again ever. That's not how this works. Like, all of our families usually came here at some point, earlier than others. But I mean, except for our Native American Indian folks, like their our families came from somewhere.
Right.
That's kind of how it works. So
Yeah.
it's just a matter of doing it sanely. But
Right. Like, my problem with illegal immigration is not that it's illegal; it's that it's immigration at the time our country cannot handle immigration.
and to your point, that kind of kicked us off into this whole thing, into a little bit of a tangent, is that is so often, unfortunately, used from a Christian perspective of taking care of people. That it's like, no, but there's a reason why we view this from a sovereignty level. But the church doesn't. The church, you go everywhere and take care of people and serve them. But it's not my government's job, who secures the border, to be my church. This is a different layer, a different level.
Yeah, there's a little excerpt that I want to share. This is from Charles Haywood's review of Charles Haywood is a shampoo CEO turned independent political writer. But this is from his review of. He's a very good writer.
We clean things up.
This will be linked in the show notes. Another reason why you should subscribe. But he does book reviews, and this is from his book review from On Social Justice by St. Basil the Great. For those that are not aware, social justice was originally a Catholic idea, because justice is something that comes from God, and the social is also something that comes from God. So there is a perfect form of social justice. Now, it has been completely appropriated by the left into this.
I'm just happy to know I can blame you for this
thing.
one. I'm going to rest social justice completely on your shoulders, just so you know.
Well, we'll see about that. But his excerpt from this talking about immigration is, quote, "No doubt many of those people want to come here because they believe that they will be richer here than in their native lands, but we have no duty to facilitate this desire, not at all. In fact, it seems to me that working for the importation of millions of migrants to America, as many charities do, notably the enormously powerful and very destructive so-called Catholic charities, is a gross violation of Christ's cardinal commandment of charity, of love for a fellow man, cleverly camouflaged as adherence to Christ's command. Its real drivers are a toxic combination of left doctrine, which aims to destroy all societal bonds and create fully atomized man." And there's more, but I definitely recommend you go through and look at this in the book notes. But yeah, I mean that's another very important point, that most of the big charities driving immigration into both the United States and into Europe are Christian and Catholic charities. Across denominations,
Mhm.
Christian charities. Which is another reason don't trust. It might be a clothing. Just because somebody looks like they're Christian on the outside doesn't necessarily automatically mean they get their vote or they get your vote. And just because a charity says they're Christian on the outside doesn't automatically mean that they should get your tax deductible dollars just because they're a Christian nonprofit. Because there's a lot of most Christian nonprofits out there working in immigration are working towards the destruction of Christian civilization, probably unbeknownst to them.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. I'm gonna move on here to a couple of things. We've got I see a lot of stuff going on here in the chats,
Oh yes.
and I want to address a couple things. First of all, I am sorry if the audio is patchy. It is not the equipment here; it's internet connection today. So I'm actually already looking into a couple of things there that hopefully we can increase that. Our speed is suffering today, so I apologize the lagging. Yes, Velveteen Rabbit, there are show notes from the email list. Sign up at phyllisschlafly.com. We'll send it to you. Also, we may start publishing those if this goes out podcast form. There'll be a couple of places where you can find it. I've got a couple of things too on the website where I want to start putting up back notices as well, or back issues. So that's something important. Someone over in the Rumble chat asked what we think about James Lindsay. I've heard of him. He's been around at Turning Point stuff recently. He's an author. Have you heard of him?
I'm not a big fan.
I'm not a fan. I would tend to say that falls to me into the category, just a short answer. I think you probably agree with me. I appreciate his critique of leftism when he has it. It's a credible thing for him to come out and say, no, just like the Gays Against Groomers folks. That's a very unique group of people to come out and say no to something. However, I don't look to this group necessarily to inform my conservative values. Likewise, I don't look at James Lindsay, who I think is a self-professed former leftist / current leftist, not a conservative, atheist or new atheism, whatever he calls himself.
Yeah.
This isn't my guy for me informing my own values. I appreciate when he comes out and has something kind of credible to say, no, the left is stupid on this. Fine, good. But I'm not really sure I'm ready to adopt him and be like, yeah, come on in. I have a pretty strong hesitation
Yeah,
there.
he's another one of those grifters with progressive priors that has embedded himself into conservative circles and is harmful towards the movement, and is taking advantage of the very bad tendency of conservatives. Whenever they see any progressive or leftist being like, "Wow, those woke people have kind of gone mad," they're like, "Yes, he's our guy." Like anytime Bill Maher is like, "Oh, those left people have gone crazy," they're like, "He's our guy," and it's like, "No, this guy would put you in the." Anyways.
See, that's the thing to me, though, that is indicative. We are dealing with two different things. There are liberals with whom I agree on tons of issues, and there are leftists who are slaves to a statist authoritarian agenda. It's not just about having liberal values that's different than mine. It's about there is no discussion anymore. We will have this narrative, and anyone who dissents from it will be jailed. I'm something like that. You'll be silenced. That there is a difference, and I appreciate when a liberal up and goes, "These people are nuts. We can't let this happen." Yeah, I disagree with him on everything, but see, he recognizes that. That's right. That's part of the field. I see here over on YouTube someone asking, and this is a twofold. I mean, first of all, I say the danger coming across. This is someone asks, immigration is important. Strong leadership is critical, but do you think that Trump could potentially be crazy, like the guy with the nuclear keys be a nut job? And then later on, someone else said something about the danger coming across the border dwarfs any perceived danger. Let me say this. Because of Phyllis's early, and I think I can unequivocally give this, because of Phyllis's early endorsement of Trump, our organization's been around him, campaign. I mean, not like I've sat across the table from him and talked politics. Actually, I know he doesn't drink alcohol, but I think he drinks coffee. I don't know.
I think it runs purely on prayer.
prayer. I'm pretty sure he just runs purely on like spray tan lotion or something. It's not lotion. That's a professional thing. We've been around the inside, we've been around the inside of the administration for solid years. I think that there is some perception that he is irrational. And that's absolutely incorrect. He is unpredictable. That's for darn sure. But he is not irrational. Like when you see all of the actions, it is so much New York like bravado. But it comes up. There's no vibrato. I don't want to hear him break into opera. There is so much New York City bravado and just all of this. Oh, like we see with this. Oh, run to sanctimonious, and we're posting pictures of Hillary, Haley, and all this other stuff, and he's just like this just uncontrollable weirdo who just smacks at everyone and says the most outlandish things. And then we get to election night, victory comes through, and he says, "Oh, we put this behind us." It's literally almost like, "Yeah, so and so is just the dumbest person alive. Oh, that was in the past. Tonight we're all fine. I love him. We're good friends." Like it's all this bravado of talk. But the reality is, rubber meets the road when he's decided to install people in positions of power, in positions of authority, or put up people for nomination. When he's actually made policy decisions, when every single one of them has come out, they have been thoroughly vetted and thought, and even the most controversial ones, like shutting down travel from 12 Muslim countries, or all these different things. When you read through it, it's like, man, this is a controversial topic. This is very well thought out. And I know that Donald Trump doesn't have all of the political knowledge to write this. He has a team that he trusted. Every single indicator that we look at, he may be wildly unpredictable, full of bravado and braggadocious talking. But I have never, ever, ever seen irrational behavior, concerning behavior. And I see so many people go, "Oh, well, he just has mean tweets." And I'm like, yeah, but at the end of the day, like, I've seen Joe Biden campaign on a lot of different things, but Donald Trump was the first one who shook hands with the North Korean dictator and walked back and forth across the border, and yet wasn't bowing down to him. Thank you, Obama, and the Middle East and in Asia. We remember that one. Like Trump went and met with these world leaders and projected a very strong congeniality, but never submissiveness.
Right.
That's super weird to me because I've never seen a president do that in my lifetime. Like there has never been a Ronald Reagan tear down this wall moment. And I'm not, watching Trump speak in Poland, watching Trump meet with all of these leaders, kind of even if the strong arm thing with the handshake and pushing in front of people, touching the Saudi prince as he walks by. It's kind of this unique, like John Wayne American swagger.
Right.
But it's all very purposeful. When I look at it, none of it is irrational. None of it is crazy. None of it is something that's concerning. It's all very unpredictable. And by goodness, could we use some unpredictability in American leadership nowadays?
And the note about the nuclear keys, I mean, Trump is not going to nuke anybody. He's starting no new wars in his tenure as president.
I was about to say, first of all, one person can't actually do everything. I think that requires a system. But second of all, I mean, the dude had the laurels of power for 4 years and actually
created stability in our foreign policy.
Right. I mean, for the first time, he actually exactly on a foreign policy level, like he, out of all of the stuff that we keep starting and getting involved in, or other people's stuff that we keep getting involved in, this guy ran around and kind of made peace with everyone, and also bombed the heck out of people. Like dropped some Moab bombs because they were about to go out of date on ISIS, and essentially ended the conflict instead of prolonging it. He killed one of the top Iranian officials on Tonex, and we didn't go to war with Iran. One of those, well, yeah, we're going to protest, but I mean, actually kind of afraid. Now, nowadays, like if Biden actually managed to do that, I have a feeling it would be so rushed. We would end up in an all-out war with Iran, and yet we didn't with Trump. I think we have more than enough evidence that, and I'm not trying to mock anyone's question. It's a legitimate question because that is a narrative that is peddled. He's crazy. He's unpredictable. He's irrational. He's going to tear everything down. He had 4 years to do it, and he actually created more peace and stability with our image across the world, and with our economy, and with our energy sector, and with all kinds of stuff. I think we have more than enough at this point to look and say that's not outside the realm of possibility. So I would resoundingly say the evidence says that that's not something that we're worried about. I'm personally not worried
Mhm.
about it, and I think that the facts are there as well.
We've got a
But
few more
yeah,
chat messages. Illegal immigration is deep. So true. Me too. Um, justice is more of a biblical idea than okay, I meant that social justice as a term originated with
yeah,
Catholics, not that justice as a concept originated with Catholics. Um,
the
yeah,
issue for me.
we've had a lot. We've had a lot of chatting today, and we love all the chatting.
I tell you what,
Who is holier than Mitt Romney?
who
Joseph Smith.
his underwear.
Oh,
His underwear. Yeah, those were. And then that just brought up a very topic that we might actually want to talk about because the whole Ronna Romney McDaniel thing. There's a couple very interesting sides of that, but that's getting deep into the weeds of Republican Party politics. Man, this stream is fuzzy today. I do apologize, folks, for our upload problem. I don't know what the deal is, but we're going to figure out a
yeah.
pipeline.
Hopefully, it'll be better next week.
We're going to figure out a pipeline to surpass this and try to get it.
We're getting close to breaking our record, so I think we should probably wrap
We
it
got
up.
to stop. We got to wrap it up. I don't remember what the record was. Well, I tell you what. Yes, there are show notes. Yes, you can get them. Yes, you should shoot us an email, info@phyllisschlafly.com, if you have more that you want to talk about. And also, you YouTube people, I love you. I use YouTube too, but man, the Rumble comments are where it's at. So you might as well come over to those of us, the weirdies, who talk about all sorts of food groups and openings and fences. These words we're not allowed to say. You put them together. The conspiratorial stuff can go on over there. Not kidding. You should come on over to Rumble, though, because there's some good conversation going down in the chat over there. And that is a place where we're a little bit more insulated in what we can say, and it doesn't get cut by big tech. So we'll wrap it up. Thank you for being here. Not them, you. Thank you for being here.
And thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you.
But thank you all for being here with both of us. We do this for you, like I like to say. We do this to have a conversation with you, and we want to hear from you.
Right.
We want to hear your topic ideas. We want you to look at the things that we talked about today. So enjoy the rest of y'all's week. Try to have a warm weekend, depending on where you're living. Yeah.